Hi, Serena. Thanks so much for joining me today for this unusual and I know, a super interesting episode on sustainable events management and delivery performance. I am the person who actually started my not career path, but my first job was in events. That was 2009. I was doing big mass events like openings of stadiums, anniversaries of independence of certain countries. And I was involved in stage management. And I remember all the while studying for my bachelor in environmental science. And I know I was in stage management, and we used tons of tapes, tons of like signage and stuff that we would throw out at the end of every rehearsal. I don't know, the costumes that would be made specifically for certain events. Also, like I don't even want to know where they go at the end. So at some point of my path there, I think I did like 5 big events with the Italian company, by the way, Filmmaster Events. At that point they were called, and I was just hit at some moment with, oh my God, this is so unsustainable way of doing things, of creating something just for one night. Big event, like 5,000 people would be involved, and all their costumes and all their stuff would be, I don't know, probably thrown away at the end. So that was a bit heartbreaking. And since then, since 2008 or 9, I was already brewing in my head and questioning how would we do in the future? The future is now. How would we make these events sustainable? I am extremely happy I found you and your little company. You're based in Singapore, but you should tell me now more about where are you coming from? How did you find yourself in this industry, and why and how it came to your mind to occupy this specific niche of sustainable events management?
Well, thank you so much for the great and passionate introduction. I think you gave me quite a lot of smiles out there. So I am originally from Italy, and I have been working in events since I was 18. So it's pretty much my entire career path in it. And as you said, right, when you do a lot of events or large scale events, you tend to see the waste that goes around it, which it didn't come to me as early as it did to you. So that's bad on me. But it did take me a few years. So after probably halfway through my career, so about 6 to 7 years in the events industry and having done a number of events, I started realizing the amount of waste that was going through. And the first thing that it really got me was the food waste. So that was what it really opened my eyes. So just to backtrack a bit, when I started looking at sustainability and how we approach it into the events industry, it was about 40 years ago. And what we really mean by having sustainable events is just seriously, it's not that much of a rocket science, but it's about having a collection of practices that you embed into your planning stage that are basically there to help you avoiding waste and help you at the same time to create a positive impact for the host community, and also help you and prevent, moreover, the future generation not to have the same opportunity. So that's what it is to plan a sustainable event. So you don't only look at the way of the event to be pretty and positive, and successful, but it also has to make a positive impact. So when you create those little rules to yourself and to your event planning, you really want to look at how do we have low waste, how do we make a positive impact, and how do we ensure that the future generation they will have the same opportunity as we have today. So with all that big peace of mind, I started looking around on how you can do this on a very practical basis. And that is really the reason why I opened the company. So eventACT was founded in Singapore about 3 years ago, after me deciding that I did no longer want to plan events for companies that they didn't understand or they didn't resonate with my aim to make the events industry, or at least every single event I've planned, a little bit more environmentally friendly. So I've decided to take off and begin my own journey, which was a little brave, as I was the only one really trying to do this at event planning level. Which it created a bit of a, a little bit of a space for what I was trying to do. And to my pleasant surprise, it has been well received since. And the way that really has been the most well received is from the larger companies, which, believe it or not, they were the one that perhaps are more used to it, maybe because they have international regulation to have to comply with as well. But at the beginning, I thought that it would have been something like my hobby or my side project, and then I found myself basically diving right in because there was a need. So I was really happy to see that.
From Italy to Singapore, why Singapore? Why did you choose Singapore?
Honestly said, I don't have a specific reason to why Singapore. But before Singapore, I did travel around. So my very first country I moved in from Italy was the Canary Islands. So I was in Tenerife for a couple of years, where I also had my own business there. So I believe I was born with an entrepreneurial spirit. And after which I decided to really devote more time into the events, as this has always been something that came very natural to me and I always enjoyed. So I moved back to Italy for a while, took a bit of a couple of event planning courses, then moved to London, where I really forged the base of my experiences. But after spending 6 years in London, I was kind of ready for a new chapter. And I really wanted to experience different cultures and different way of working. And I came to, a junction where it was, well, I can go to this hemisphere or I can go to the other hemisphere. So the idea was either going to the USA or to coming down to Asia. And within Asia, the only countries that really were having my background would have been either Hong Kong or Singapore. And I guess Singapore, it looked more green and it looked more spacious, and it kind of was more appealing to me. So there you go. And that's how I chose Singapore. I don't really have a very strict answer to that.
It just looks like Singapore is very receptive to all sorts of sustainability related ideas. And it just happens that somehow, I did not choose specifically, but somehow most of my guests of this very podcast are from Singapore or based in Singapore at the moment. Estelle Forget, we spoke about sustainability of cities. My classmate that I also spoke to him today, Terry Young as well. He's working at them also with urban sustainable Center for Livable Cities. And everyone who is doing something and flourishing in their business are in Singapore. So I thought maybe there was some specific idea behind. Did you have to study event management before or sustainability before? It was just kind of a natural flow for you?
So how I came to events, it was really through experiences that I had through my school or even through my dance academy. So I was kind of planning here and there for the stage and for the costume and the music and the buses. So I kind of found myself knowing how to plan just out of doing it from a younger age. And then what happened with sustainability is that I didn't exactly knew what that meant, but I knew that it was important to me. So it really came out of a passion and a belief. So I did my own research on what sustainability means apply to the events industry and how you can actually create some sort of value by implementing those different practices. So I have to go through a lot of different, websites and courses, and I was really lucky that 4 years ago I met with the team that runs sustainability for IMEX at IMEX Frankfurt, and that is really well. They were really welcoming, and they couldn't believe that finally someone else was joining them. So at the time, the group wasn't really that large, and they took me under their wing, and they teach you and they coach you. So I think it was really much part of my own research to how I managed then to implement those practices and make them mine. But I haven't studied environment. I don't have any background in environmental studies at all. It just came from home practices and belief of doing the right thing. So that's how I came to it.
Yeah, a natural flow of how things evolved. When we say sustainably managed event, sustainably prepared and sustainably developed event, delivered event, what do we mean exactly? What does it encompass?
So there are different ways to look at this. So how I was explaining before, what we call a sustainable event is an event that has a variety of practices and regulation, if you like, that help you creating a more eco-friendly event. How do we look at this is we have different aspects to look at that. So we look at the supply chain, we look at the venue, we look at the city, we look at the community host, we look at the waste, and we look at what are those positive impacts that we leave in the society and in that specific community after we leave. So looking at all these different aspects and to take it a little bit more practical, what does it mean looking at event planning through a supply chain? It means finding out what products are available that may not be harmful to the environment, or that they are produced in a way where the workers, they actually get respected, they get the right salaries. So it's a lot of ways even to just look into the supply chain and understanding really what's the product that you are buying into, and where at the end of the day, where are you parking your budget, and what is the impact that your money will do to that specific product, right? So that's only just the supply chain. And then if you're looking at the venue, there's a lot to do with it's a pre-made venue. So is there, let's say, a hotel or a convention center or a stadium, or is something that you will have to build specifically for that event? And what would that happen to that structure after you've done with your event? So what is the plan for that structure? Would that be abandoned? Would it have been used as a hospital or as a recovery center? So when you look at creating a structure, you really want to think further past what happened to that structure for that one time a year. Even though you may build it for future years, there is 365 days in a year. So what happened in between your event and your next event to that space? And when instead comes to physical venues like hotels or convention center, is what you really want to do is to associate yourself with venues that have a good structure in place, and they understand the value of having sustainable practices, whether it is to use reusable energy or using local farming, or having local employees. So it's different practices that goes through it. And of course, let's not even get started on waste subject. So on that's a lot to do on how do we prevent waste, because there's nothing that we can do after the waste is generated. I mean, of course, there is diversion from landfill, but what you really want to look at is like, how do I avoid creating waste at once? So we're going through the production chain and see, okay, what do we need, what we don't need, and how can we get around the subject of producing, or is that something that we can do in terms of what materials we have? So we're going back onto your supply chain. So this is what it really means having a sustainable event. It's really not just looking at pretty and successful under the eye of your guests, but it's also understanding what benefits and negative impact it makes to the community and to the environment at all.
Right. And I think, you're so right to mention that waste is just the tip of the iceberg. It's something that everyone notices. And it makes me think, again, a lot of my friends ask me, where do I recycle this or that things like plastic? We don't have too many facilities here anyway. And I'm like, wait, ask yourself the right question and it will already give you half of the right answer. How do I not produce waste in the first place? And then how do I recycle the rest? And you will see, maybe you will not need to ask yourself the second question at all. So I'm always teaching people when I can and where they are receptive to the advice. I always say, think about zero waste, think about avoiding waste and minimizing it. But it's true, there are so many things hidden before this waste is created. So supply chain, local products, local workforce, and so on. How big of events are we talking? Conventions, conferences, or something that requires, I don't know, costumes, making, and performance?
Traditionally, I think what I've assisted with the most is conferencing and product launches, sports events, and awards. So we are talking on a decent numbers from anything from 100 up to 2000. So that's the kind of region. And, it does obviously increase the effect of your decisions based on the numbers of your attendees, but sometimes there are way bigger choices that it would be completely irrelevant whether you have 10 people or 10,000. And those are actually the best choices to make, because especially when we talk to conference producers or event producers, they may not only have one event, but they may have a pool of events that they organize throughout the year. And what I always try to say is, don't use this exercise for one single time. Just try to make it a routine. And I always make this joke and say, don't run on a treadmill to have a donut. So that's the exact same thing. Don't make so much effort within one single event or then forget all about it into the next, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it also comes on an economical advantage. If you start creating those structures and those products that you can reduce time after time, you will see your costs decreasing and actually creating more value to your event, because at the same time you don't have to stress about certain things because you know that you've got them, so you can just move on to next, and you can invest that time to create something better or something different, or perhaps work better on your content or on your route or whatever that is. So usually I would always try to say, it doesn't matter how many guests you have, because unless you are organizing one event and one event only, you can always apply the same rule to all your other events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. But I was mostly thinking about really just costumes, because a friend of mine that works with me on the podcast, that is editing and creating the transcripts, she's also from the stage management team like me, and now internal joke that what we are doing now is the same event making. We just release an event every week, so the episode, and we are doing an online stage management. She asked me that, actually. She was like, she also has a heart for sustainability and environment, and she was like, but what about costumes? So I was also thinking, like, what's going on with all these masses of not even always a textile. Sometimes it's a very artificial, I don't know, material, like impermeable.
Oh yeah, like waterproof.
Waterproof, exactly. Waterproof material and so on. What happens to
So
that?
I actually had this conversation with a filmmaking agency here in Singapore, which I got to talk to them through another client that I helped for an event. And her husband is the manager of this filmmaking company, and they said, please tell me what to do with all this stuff. And I was like, well, okay, let's go step by step. And I always say, take it one step at a time. Don't look at the top, just look at what you've got around you. So I think when it comes to costumes, the first question that we ask is, has anyone else used the same materials before? Can I get a rented costume rather than a buying costume? And that would already cut off a lot of your waste, right? And it's not only the waste, but it's also, the cost that goes with it. Because if you need to have a certain amount of waste to be collected, it might cost you X amount, but if you have half of it, obviously it will be less. While on the other end, what I was suggesting to them is try to use textile as much as you can, because textile, it's easier to be recycled, and it could be recycled in so many ways, whether it's like a pure using it as it is in terms of clothing, or it can be used for art installation. It could be used for simply getting back and do other clothing or bags, or even like tent for concerts and so on. So there's so many ways, but there's only as many textile that you can use. And as you mentioned, if you start going to those products which aren't really good to be recycled, you have no choice. And that is where we get stuck. So, for instance, what I suggested to them is to create their own little wardrobe of things that are very unusual, and trying to use this as an exercise to then reuse the same items in many different ways before making it to the end cycle of the landfill. And another was try to catch those items out of a recycling market, or like a car boot sale, or like try not to just purchase it brand new, because at least, even though you can avoid the end of the cycle, you are not creating an additional waste. You are actually helping to get it through the end of the cycle. So as a matter of fact, it's you just going through the circle of the product rather than going linear product waste. So that was another thing that I've given to them. Or very simply, you could collaborate with some of the theaters, dance schools, or charities that they do shows, and just simply say, hey, we've done this show, these are the costumes, would you use it? So at least somehow they just don't end up in a bin. They don't just end up as a pure waste. So these are my few top advice I can give you for costumes. I hope you guys can get a little bit of a peace of mind with that.
It's true. By the way, what was happening with events that you were managing, scheduling for the past 3 Corona-affected months?
So for the time being, because we usually work on year-to-year event and medium to large scale, the events that we had, they have been postponed to 2021.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it did change the spectrum all at once. However, that gives me the opportunity to invest the time onto a new product line that I was trying to push out, which is one of the biggest pain points for every single person that's trying to do events sustainably, which is actually trying to find sustainable products for their events. And here we're talking about name badges, lanyards, backdrops, all of these kind of products that usually are one-time use, and they're pretty much made out of plastic and surrogates, which are quite hard to find, especially in Asia. So I've decided to then take this time to create finally this platform where not only myself or us as a company can rely on, but every single event planner can just tackle on and get exactly what they need without having to go through the pain of searching worldwide for these products. So yes, of course, it has been a hit in terms of current business, but it's also been a bliss because it's giving us the time to work onto this new product, which is quite exciting. And we also brought new people on board, so it created that kind of like a new freshness the whole through the whole company, which is always good to have. So yeah, unfortunately, the event has been cancelled. Well, not cancelled, but postponed to next year. But from the bed, obviously, we got that silver liner. So we're really excited to see that coming forward, hopefully by January next year.
Well, that's a brilliant idea. I like that you're also, spreading the knowledge and getting people on board with this idea. Speaking of the, reception of the idea of sustainable events, how does the general public take it? Do they want more? And your clients, do they ask for more like sustainability, or are they mostly going the traditional way?
So there's two answers to that. There is the polite answer and there is the true answer. So let's start with the polite answer. Politely saying, yes, companies are looking to be more sustainable. And you have a variety of factors, being because the company has sustainability development goals that they have to achieve, and events is a part of how they achieve these goals. Some of them, they simply need to create a more eco-friendly environment because their core product or their core service isn't as ethical. So they're trying to patch wherever they can, however they can. And then you have the truly sustainable companies that at heart they are driven by people that they believe in the cause, and they believe that everything they touch should be done in a sustainable way. So that's your polite talk pitch answer. The reality is that it is still a very new subject, and it's very unknown, especially attached to event planning as such. And more often than not, when the company starts seeing the differences into the end product, or they understand that there are additional steps to be taken, or perhaps there are additional costs to be covered, they usually try to back off it. So as a first approach, they say yes, but then there is a good part of them which is say, oh, well, actually, let's just do that as a CSR activity rather than bringing it into our entire event. But I must say that this is a practice that is getting less and less popular. So now we see coming companies which they understand a bit more of how events can also share the knowledge of sustainability and bring awareness, and they are a little bit more committed into the cause. And I also think that this is coming off at the back of the whole pandemic situation, where people they started. I guess we had a lot of time to think in the last few months, and I think that a lot of people they start understanding a bit more of what climate change is and what do we do on a daily basis and how we impact even with small activities. And then I guess it's really forging this thought into the mind of the general public. So I think that we will see more and more of the needs of live events to become more sustainable, because that is the face of any company. And if their company cares about their own brand, they should be able to understand that this is also part of what they have to do. So, yeah.
On the economical or rather financial side of matters, is it, according to you, is it more expensive to have the event sustainable or traditional plastic use and throw away way?
Well, the economical benefits of having sustainability embedded into your events, it can be seen on the long run. Meaning, what I usually try to say is, don't look at an individual event budget, but look at your overall annual budget. And then with that, we will be able to see a curve where perhaps the first couple of sustainably run events might tend to be more expensive, but on the long term, you will see those mind-shifting activities happening. And towards the end of your year, you can see how you're actually saving money on the same event that you've planned the year before. So it is a learning curve, and it comes with pros and cons. So of course, as we were saying before, don't run on the treadmill and eat a donut. So don't do the exercise of having a sustainable event once and then just throw your learning to the bin because it was too hard, because that is exactly when you start the whole learning process. And really, it's not about being more expensive, but it's also how you use your budget. So there is a lot of ways, as we were saying before, how do I avoid that waste? And that also comes to the terms of how do I avoid that purchase? So you are making a decision of whether investing that amount of budget towards something that is going to the trash. And here we're talking about programs, invitation, gifts. We're talking about conference equipment. We're talking about exhibition stands. So we're talking about things that, yes, there might be a first step benefit in having it a disposable or one-time use, or like cheap and cheerful sort of approach. But on the long term, you are actually throwing your money to the trash, quite basically. And it is just how much you want to devote into sustainability. And I guess it's also how many events do you do in a year, or what is your turnover. And I guess that would make an impact on the final answer. But I think there is an economical impact, a positive one. But it's usually seen after practicing for a little while. It's not a one time.
Mm-hmm. I'll be honest with you. When I was searching I really wanted to interview someone from this industry, events, because this is where I started. This is where my partner in podcasting crime is also from. She was left without a job this year and next year, most probably too. I mean, big events will not be a priority in the next years for sure. And I did not find a lot of people. Basically, I only found you with a mention of sustainable events management on LinkedIn. Do you have any competitors that you know of, at least in Singapore or maybe elsewhere, just to understand how popular the idea is?
I think I wouldn't say competitors. I would be really happy to have another soul that does this in Asia, so then we can cry shoulder to shoulder. But it's I must say that especially in an Asian context, it is hard to find another event agency that uses sustainability truly to plan events. So as of now, I don't have major competitors in my own market. However, there are several. Actually, we are about 100,000 event professionals that are developing sustainability consciousness for our profession. So we aren't that many, but the number is up and running. So I would say that perhaps in the next few years, we will see the rising on sustainable event planners coming up. And this is a very new practice anyway. Even for the so-called veterans, they are still new themselves, and we all work together. And I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of it. It's like we don't fight, we actually work alongside, because we all have different challenges. We all live in different countries, and we all have the same issues after all. So I found that with those people that they are in my same journey, every time we kind of bumped into one another, but either visually or physically, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe there is another one of me somewhere. So we usually don't call each other competitors. It's more like a community that is growing. So perhaps ask me this question in 10 years, and I must say, yes, I do have competitors. But for now, I think there is an arising on events professional, but it's not really as a saturated market as of now.
Right. On top of your mind, top 5 challenges of the industry that you face?
So if we're linking this to sustainability, one of them is definitely sustainable procurement, which is why I'm looking at creating this platform to help other professionals. The second one is the buy-in from every single stakeholder in the company, because again, when we have different people involved, not everyone has the same idea and the same priorities, and sustainability isn't usually the first one for everyone. I think the third one is to actually create an environment that is truly sustainable. So a lot of times it's easier said than done, and the follow through within the activities that we would say we would do, it can be challenging. So sometimes it doesn't really go through, which is one of the biggest challenges, together with measurement, which I would call is the fourth challenge. Yes, doing sustainable events is great, and you can be as eco-friendly as you like, but if you haven't measured how far you went, you kind of made a lot of efforts for nothing. And unfortunately, the measurement is never as accurate as we wish to be, for many reasons. And that it's another challenge that, I can see now there's more companies that are getting into this. And I'm sure it's something that it won't be as challenging in a few years down the line, but right now it's something that we see exploring. So there are some challenges attached to the measurements of the activities that you do. And then I guess the last one, it is linked to the financial side of things. As we said before, if you're doing it as a one-off or just to try, it might not be as economically viable as perhaps running a traditional way event.
Right. Do you think anything with the industry of events is going to change in the post-pandemic, sustainability-wise?
I think the industry will change as a whole, sustainability aside. I think, as we were saying before, people have had a lot of time to think, and I hope they invested the thinking time in the right way. And I'm sure that there would be a lot more people that they may be more aware, and they will try to make a difference, which it brings us to a point where companies that are planning events, they will have to cope with the expectation of the general public. So we would see more sustainability coming to the picture. But also I think that the digital way of running events is becoming sharper and sharper, and I don't see this as a temporary solution. I actually see this as kind of a complementary solution to our live events. So as we are creating more content and we see the benefits of running this content digitally, I would see that kind of practice remaining. And not 100%, but I would say that there would be certain type of events like lectures and conferencing that they might actually stay online.
Wow, have you been approached already with this sort of engagements?
Oh yes, I am myself planning on a few projects to bring them on a digital platform, which is like very challenging. I find this more challenging than running sustainable events, to be honest with you. But I guess I'm more used to that. But it's also like a positive challenge. It's like, how do we become more resourceful with the medium that we have? So yes, I'm working on a variety of programs, whether are festivals or kids carnival or conferences. So there's been a few projects that came up to my lines and said, okay, well, it won't be any more sustainable than doing it digitally, so let's try. Why not?
That's true. Well, certainly a big change is coming up. And I was reading, I think, an article that was on The Guardian, and one line, someone that was stuck in my head. I'm all for the digital events, but please, I want to sometimes sit by the table with other people in front of the biscuits dish.
Yeah, I guess that's where we're going with. I don't think that every single event will turn digital. I don't think that that's reasonable, and we are humans, and there's nothing better than human and physical interactions, especially when, we're talking about making connections that need to last a long run. But for sure, I think that the digital element would remain. It will not just disappear. And I think it would be a quite interesting concept to see the events going halfway digital, halfway live, and also how we bridge the gap in between the crazy amount of travel that we usually do, and how do we then use the technology that we have learned and mastered right now to our advantage in the future, so that it may come useful to us again. But definitely we will have to see people around. I'm pretty sure we will see them around a conference table with biscuits on hands. That's not going to change anytime soon.
Just wanted to add two more benefits that I heard of this digital events. Is first one that it allows some decentralization. So if usually the events would happen, in a country like mine, in Ukraine, in the capital, everything that is happening in the capital. Right now, you can connect from where you are, and you're still attending the same thing. You're listening to the same speeches. You're getting the same materials. I'm very glad it went online so that it's more accessible to people. And number two is those who cannot travel due to their inability, like physical inability, handicaps, and so on. Those people are included in the dialogue again, and that's amazing too.
I think definitely that's what we call accessibility for all, which is also part of how we make events sustainable, not from an environmental point of view, but from a social perspective. And definitely the fact that we can rely on technology to bring people together, that shouldn't be underestimated at all. And it also comes together with so many more beneficial factors, like the air miles, so the carbon footprint that we would be able to avoid, as you said, having people not to have to travel to larger cities, but perhaps having the subsidized cities to take advantage of the operations. And then, of course, people that they may not be able to travel for all sorts of reasons. It may not be a physical reason, but it might be an economical reason. It might be that they have different commitments, that they overlap. So with the digital side, we really give full access 24/7, right? I mean, time zone apart. I think what the digital world can bring to us, it's really how we connect and how we manage to open up those barriers and those frontiers that we would usually have if we are in a physical location.
Thank you, Serena. It was a great interview. I learned a lot, and I hope my listeners did so too. To wrap up this conversation, one piece of advice I usually ask for my guests to give one piece of advice to the listeners. It can be anything related to the subject, or a book recommendation, or a movie to, one step to go further in exploration of the topic.
Right. The best piece of advice I can give to anyone, and you can take it whether through a sustainability journey you're taking or to a journey that you're taking right now, is take a step at a time and just look much further off of what's happening right now. So that's, I think it's an advice that I give to myself every single day as well, especially those days that that are more overwhelming than others. And you can take it, you can apply to everything. It's like a magic sentence. And definitely, I think if people want to be more attached to the sustainability subject, such as start from your own community, get together with people that they are close to you so that you don't feel alone and you feel much more motivated to begin the journey, and to also share your good and bads with people that are next to you, which also open a lot of great new friendship. So that's definitely another little piece of advice.
So, in one sentence is act locally in every sense.
Yeah, stay local. I mean, we don't have much choice right now. We may very soon, but for now, stay local. Yeah.
Yes. Super. Thanks so much for your time and for sharing.
Well, thank you for the invite. It's been great having you here as well. I think it's so great to have people from all over the world. So again, uh, benefits of technology, but it's been like a pleasure being up.
Definitely. Stay safe. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, you too. Bye.